Welcome to the Research Analytics Hub, where research gets real. In today's session, our panelists will explore key insights into English language teaching. Are you ready to transform your English teaching skills? Discover proven methods, powerful tools, and practical techniques that will energize your classroom and engage your learners. Let's dive into the art of teaching English where language truly comes alive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really fascinating plunge into the world of English language teaching methods. You've sent us this rich academic text, and our mission, well, it's to pull out the most important, maybe even surprising, nuggets of knowledge about how English is taught and learned. Think of it as your shortcut to really understanding what makes language learning click.
It's such a crucial topic, definitely, especially when you think about English's assured place, its important place, as a second language in somewhere like India, for example. And, well, its role as one of the most widely used international languages today, globally. We'll really get into the science behind it, the strategies teachers use, and the tools that help someone become truly proficient.
Absolutely. We're going to look at everything, starting from the very nature of language itself, right up to the specific techniques you might see in a classroom. So maybe grab a mental notepad, because it's time to get informed. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Before we even talk about teaching it, what is language? At its core, I mean. What are the sources telling us?
Well, what's really fascinating here is how fundamentally our sources define it. It's not just about talking. Language is described as a symbol system based on pure arbitrary conventions, which sounds complex, but basically means we agree cat means cat. And crucially, it's infinitely extendable and modifiable according to the changing needs and conditions of the speakers.
So it grows and changes with us.
Exactly. Edward Sapir put it nicely, calling it a purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions, and desires by means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. It's not instinct, it's learned. And Derbyshire pointed out it's primarily vocal sounds, articulatory, we make the sound systematic, it has rules, and arbitrary. That arbitrary part is key. No real reason dog sounds like dog.
Right, it's a convention. So it's this incredibly flexible human system built on shared agreement. And how does it function for us? What's its main job?
Its primary functions are, well, obviously communication, but also self-expression and even thinking itself. Language shapes how we think. The book really emphasizes that it's the means by which humans grow into a community and interact. It's changed the entire gamut of human relations on Earth.
Wow, that's a huge role. Okay, thinking about English specifically then.
Yeah.
How did it become this international giant we know today? What's the story there?
Oh, English has a fascinating history. It actually evolved from West Germanic dialects spoken by the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes way back in the 5th century. And surprisingly, it's more closely related to West Frisian than any other modern language, even though less than a quarter of its vocabulary is shared now because of all the borrowing from Norse, Norman, French, Latin.
So a real mix.
A huge mix. And then the establishment of the first permanent English-speaking colony in North America in 1607, that was a massive milestone in its spread across the globe.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for teaching, I think. We hear about American English or British English, but the source talks about international English. What's the difference there?
That's a really important distinction. So English as an additional language, EAL, that's usually based on American or British standards. You learn that specific type. But English as an international language, EIL, its goal is different. It aims to give students the tools for truly international communication. It often emphasizes neutrality, trying to minimize aspects linked to, say, British colonial imperialism or 20th century U.S. cultural imperialism.
So it's trying to be less owned by one culture.
Exactly. It's seen more as a product of an emerging world culture, fostering linguistic transculturation. It's about shared communication, not adopting one specific cultural version. It's quite a shift in thinking.
It really is. Okay, so we've defined language, traced English's journey. Now let's get into the psychology. How do we actually learn a language? What are the big ideas here from a psychological perspective?
Right. The sources dive into two major schools of thought here, behaviorism and cognitivism. Behaviorism, Pavlov and Skinner, it focuses on what you can see and measure, observable stuff. Pavlov's classical conditioning, the dog and the bell experiment, remember that, showed creatures respond to stimuli.
The stimulus response idea.
Precisely. And Skinner took it further with operant conditioning experiments with pigeons, rats, highlighting how reinforcement rewards, basically, shapes responses. The core idea is humans learn through stimulus and response, like forming habits.
So that's all about external triggers and rewards, shaping behavior from the outside. What about cognitivism? How did that differ?
Cognitivism was a major shift. It argued that the mind itself can be studied scientifically. It allows us to talk about invisible things like minds and purposes. It brought mental processes back into the picture, thinking, understanding, memory. And most modern psychologists, philosophers, linguists, they tend to lean more towards this cognitive approach now.
Makes sense for something as complex as language. Beyond these big theories, what other psychological factors are really critical for someone learning a language?
Motivation. The source highlights this as a central factor, and it really is. Good motivation arouses interest, it makes learning effective, it creates a better classroom atmosphere. It even inspires students to, identify themselves with the learning process and use their own ambitions, which raises that big question for teachers. How do you foster that internal drive?
Yeah, that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
And tied closely to that is reinforcement, right? You mentioned Skinner.
Exactly. Reinforcement is anything that makes a response stronger, more likely to happen again. It can be positive, like getting praise or an award. It can be negative, where something unpleasant is removed. Or even punishment, though that's often less effective for learning. The source talks about primary reinforcers' basic needs like hunger, thirst, and secondary ones, things we learn to value like reputation, money, getting a good position. Teachers use these secondary ones all the time.
Okay, so we need motivation, we need reinforcement. What about just basic brain functions, attention and memory? How do they fit in?
Oh, they're absolutely vital. The brain has several tasks in memory: registering information, retaining it, recalling it later, and recognizing it. So the teacher's goal has to be making the teaching simple and lucid for better retention. You want learners to be able to fix the concept. And this directly impacts habit formation, which is so key for language. Good retention leads to better articulation, rhythm, intonation, pronunciation, better speaking, and writing overall. It all links together.
It really does. Okay, so with that foundation, understanding language, understanding the psychology, what actual methods do teachers use? Let's unpack some of these approaches, maybe starting with the older ones.
Right. We can start with the grammar translation method. This one's quite old school. The main unit of teaching is just the word. Grammar is seen as the soul of language, and all the rules are explained, usually in the student's mother tongue. It pretty much ignores actual communication. The focus is almost entirely on reading and writing, analyzing the language.
Sounds familiar, maybe from learning Latin or something.
Yeah.
Then came the direct method, which sounds like the complete opposite.
It really was, yes. Developed by scholars like Franke in Germany. This method teaches the foreign language through conversation, discussion, reading, but all in the target language. No use of the mother tongue, no translation allowed. You teach the first words by pointing to things, doing actions. The teacher pushes for direct, spontaneous use. Textbooks might even be avoided early on to focus purely on pronunciation and speaking.
Like immersion, but in the classroom.
Pretty much. Then you have attempts to maybe blend things, like the bilingual method. Yeah, Dr. C.J. Dodson developed that one between 67 and 72. It allows for some judicious use of the mother tongue, mainly just to explain difficult words or abstract ideas quickly. Then you phase it out as students get better. It can save time and help grasp tricky concepts. But the potential downside is students might lean on their first language too much and not develop fluency in the target language as strongly. It's a trade-off.
A balancing act. The source also mentions a reading method. That feels very specific.
It does. This came from Dr. Michael Waste, who really emphasized reading ability, particularly for learners in India. He believed reading provided the easy channel for communication with the international community and access to science and technology advancements. For him, speaking wasn't quite as crucial as being able to read well in English. But, as you can guess, the big disadvantage is it neglects speaking and writing skills. You get a very lopsided proficiency.
Definitely. Okay, moving into more modern thinking, often termed approaches rather than strict methods. What about the structural approach?
This approach is all about the patterns of language. It organizes the material based on language structure, arranging selected English sentences into a syllabus. It's heavily based on that behaviorist theory we talked about, stimulus response, habit formation. The goal is to help students internalize sentence patterns. Advantages are supposedly faster learning, a strong focus on oral skills first, and the idea that grammar is learned almost automatically through practice. It really promotes using common, everyday English structures.
Drills and patterns, basically.
Lots of drills, yeah. And then perhaps the most current one, the communicative approach. This sounds like what many people aim for now. It really is. This is very much learner-centered. The goal isn't just being grammatically correct. It's about developing social skill, knowing what to say, how to say it, when to say it, where, all to meet real daily communication needs. The teacher acts more like a facilitator, a co-participant, providing resources for effective communication. It aims to develop communicative competence, which includes grammar, speech, sociolinguistic awareness, pragmatics.
So using the language for real purposes.
Exactly. It tries to create an environment where English is learned naturally through using it, much like you'd learn your first language. It fosters real interaction.
Makes a lot of sense. And, across all these different methods, the source keeps highlighting the importance of oral work.
Yeah.
Why is that so fundamental?
Yeah, oral work is seen as foundational. It prepares the ground for good silent reading later. It helps develop good speech habits, pronunciation, vocabulary. It helps students improve spelling, hearing the sounds correctly. And it develops all 4 skills: listening, speaking, writing, reading, the LSWR skills. They're all connected. Correcting pronunciation mistakes early, building accurate speech habits. It all starts with that oral practice.
Okay, so we've got the theories, the methods, but practically speaking, what do teachers actually use in the classroom? The tools and materials.
Right, the instructional materials and teaching aids. They're crucial for making teaching effective, more dynamic. You have the traditional visual aids, blackboards, charts, maps, pictures, things you can see, and slightly more advanced tools like overhead projectors, OHPs for showing transparencies, or even episopes which could project opaque things like a page from a book.
Things you might remember from school. And on the audio side.
Audio aids, things like audio cassette players, and historically, radio was huge. The Source Notes radio was a very famous medium of mass media before 3 decades ago, and often the first real attempt to teach English using broadcast media.
Bringing the sounds into the classroom or home, then combining them, audiovisual aids and technology.
Yes, things like video cassette players, VCPs, video compact discs, VCDs, television, film projectors. Television gets a special mention for its widespread availability, especially in India, and its use for educational programming, seeing and hearing people use the language. And then the really modern stuff, computer-assisted language learning, or CALL. Using computers, multimedia packages with text, graphics, audio, video, offering interactive learning.
So what are the big benefits of using all these different materials? Why bother with them?
Well, they supplement just talking. They act as motivators, make things more interesting, they can help prevent indiscipline, break up monotony, and crucially, they help make learning permanent because you're engaging more than one sense, seeing and hearing together. That plays an extraordinary role in learning. It helps things stick. Plus, they save time and energy for everyone involved. Showing a picture is faster than describing it for 10 minutes.
Makes sense. Beyond specific aids, what about the humble textbook? What makes a good language textbook according to the source?
A good one needs careful design. It should be carefully graded, new words and structures introduced step by step. It should avoid throwing too many difficult new words at you early on and repeat vocabulary you've already learned to help fix it in your memory. Practically, it needs to be a handy size, strongly bound, good paper, attractive illustrations, ideally color. And importantly, clear instructions, lots of practice exercises, and it should also provide interesting new information to expand your knowledge generally, not just language.
So it's a tool for learning about the world too. Finally, how do we know if any of this is actually working? The methods, the materials, how do we evaluate?
Evaluation and tests are essential, obviously. They judge student achievement, they help teachers figure out who needs extra help, plan remedial work, they check if a specific language point has actually been learned. They can be eye-openers for students too, helping them see where they are having difficulty. And they assess the teaching itself. Was it effective? The source mentions different types: oral tests, written tests, practical tasks. And a good language test needs to cover the necessary skills, be unambiguous, well-framed, balanced, and challenging enough for everyone.
So evaluation is key for both the learner and the teacher. Wow, what an incredible deep dive that was into English language teaching. We've journeyed from, what language is, its history, through the psychology of learning it, the diverse methods teachers use, and the tools and evaluation involved. It's clear it's much more complex than just learning lists of words.
It really is. It highlights this deep commitment to making language acquisition effective, especially for a language like English that's so vital globally. And these insights, even from an academic source like this, you can see how these foundational ideas are still shaping how teaching happens today, always adapting.
So Thinking about all these different approaches we discussed, from grammar translation right through to the communicative approach, and keeping in mind that language itself is this flexible, always changing human system, what single aspect of learning a language do you think will remain absolutely timeless? The most crucial element, no matter how technology or global communication keeps evolving. What's the one thing that will always matter?
That's a great question to leave people with.
We really hope this deep dive has given you that shortcut to being well-informed and maybe sparked some new curiosity about how languages are actually learned. Until next time, keep learning.
Thank you for joining us on the Research Analytics Hub, where research gets real. We hope today's discussion has sparked new ideas and inspired fresh approaches to English language teaching. A special thanks to our insightful contributors, Dr. Patel and Praveen Jain, for sharing their expertise and practical strategies in their book, English Language, Methods, Tools, and Techniques. Until next time, keep learning, keep teaching, and keep making language come alive.